had a cool way of rehearsing. I would go in early, and he would give me a song that was like not one of his songs. I think he never said anything about it, but he'd say, teach the band a song. It might be we did a version of Neil Diamond's, one of his tunes, and we did Bob Seger's Night Moves. We did the Muppets, the Rainbow Connection, which was great.
No way.
Yeah. Da 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 da, the rainbow. Bob sang the shit out of that. I think he didn't want us to play his songs over and over. I think he didn't want us to get parts, because if you play something 4, 5, 6 times, pretty soon you've got yourself this little part that you're going to start that works, and you're going to start to play it all the time. And my own theory was that he was trying to keep a little more spontaneity in the band by not having us just like, beat his songs to death, rehearsing them. Turned out Jim Keltner and I did a session with Neil Diamond, and Burt Bacharach and Carol Bayer Sager were their songwriters. And, I'm a huge Burt Bacharach fan.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we're standing around, and we're like, sharing a J, man, with, Burt Bacharach and Neil Diamond, right? And Neil was, says, wow, you know what? The other day, I got this tape from Bob Dylan, man. He sent me a copy of him singing Sweet Caroline. And Kellner and I both said, yeah, we played on it, man.
The typical thing at rehearsals was, if Bob actually had a suggestion, he'd whisper something in Rob's ear, and Rob would turn around to the band and say, Bob says, I had a hard time getting used to that. I wanted to say, man, Bob's right there. But that was the way it was, And I noticed as time went by that all anybody had to do was walk in the room and go, Bob says, and everybody would go, okay, what? and if he said, Bob says, we're all going to go out and take a dump in the snow, people would head for the exits pulling their pants down.
So there were explorations by everybody, should I play guitar? Should I play brushes? Should I play accordion? GE often played acoustic or his Telecaster, and Bob sometimes played, acoustic with harmonica around his neck, traditional Bob style, or he played Stratocaster. So the band could be really, really rocky, electric rocky, or it could be very intimate and folky, and beyond that, even, jazzy stuff. Tunes would kind of float like a Bill Evans trio record, or a lot of music. And I had the gall at one point to say, well, what do you want me to play on this? And Bob said, quote, I'm just a fucking poet.
Then I hear from GE again, and he said, okay, again, this is sketchy information, but he said, the plan right now is for the band to rehearse for 3 days, and then we're going to go do the first gig, and Bob will just meet us on stage. It's going to be like a Chuck Berry gig. I said, wow, that sounds crazy. Sounds like fun, or something like that. And then another few days go by, and I hear from GE again, and he said, okay, change your plans. We're going to rehearse at this place in New York, and the band's going to rehearse for 5 days, and then Bob's going to come on the 6th day. So that was the plan. Anyway, of course, it's one of those famous Bob Dylan curveballs that we've all read about, and he shows up either on the first day or the second day. And that's it. I'm just like, I just have a bad feeling about the whole thing. I'm nervous, to say the least. And we played for a couple of days, but I'm sure that Bob could see the fear, see the flop sweat, and smell the fear on me,
He would maybe suggest a riff or something on certain songs. He'd play like a 3-note riff, which I would grab, or Bucky or Charlie when he eventually joined the band, and then embellish on it, or not embellish on it. In certain, I remember with certain songs, he would say, "Let's play this riff," every time after every verse, and we would play that riff note for note. Or like in the case of something like North Country, he would just strum his guitar, and then I would play along once I knew where the verses were going, and in just my in a style that was comfortable to me, or maybe not so comfortable to me, but in a style that I felt would enhance what he was doing, And then David Kemper or George Rosselli would, they'd start with a groove, and Bob may ask him to change it or try something different or keep this but change that, or everybody was throwing in with their own ideas, but we would also honor what he was able to explain as far as what he was trying to get out of this. I mean, he wasn't very often, he didn't even know what he was trying to get out of it. He just wanted it to land in a place that felt good to him, A
lot of times we would just go up and we would start, Bob would just start playing a couple chords. We wouldn't really talk about what we were doing. We go in a room, Bob takes out the guitar, he starts strumming a few chords. We all just fall in, and drums start a rhythm, bass falls in, and we just kind of jam on something. Sometimes we would jam on something for 20 minutes. It was mostly instrumental, and then he would mumble under stuff, not really say words. And then it would progress to, then we started realizing, okay, well, some of these are songs, some are things I think he's working on in his head. And then we recognized a few of the older songs, but it was a lot of just getting a groove going and a vibe, where we didn't do that in our punk bands. The songs were 2 minutes long. We're used to playing in the shittiest of rehearsal rooms with, different bands and this and that. And to go up there and play like in this beautiful rehearsal house overlooking the ocean. And it was another world, it was ridiculous, with a security guard at the door. And like, what the hell? How do we go from that to this in like a blink of an eye,
Bob, just a guy, a few words. One thing that stood out, out of the 40 words that he spoke at me in the first year, where we were up in the studio, up in Montana Studios, and it was just him and I in the room, and I'm at the back of the room doing something, on the console, and he walked back and he goes, when it's all said and done, it comes down to two things. And then there was the long pregnant pause, Bob pause, and then he said, kids and food, and then took a bite out of a jalapeno and turned around and walked away.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the poet laureate of rock and roll, the voice of the promise of the 60s counterculture, the guy who forced folk into bed with rock, who donned makeup in the 70s and disappeared into a haze of substance abuse, who emerged to find Jesus, who was written off as a has-been by the end of the 80s, and who suddenly shifted gears, releasing some of the strongest music of his career beginning in the late 90s. Columbia recording artist, Bob Dylan.